Anne Hutchinson, the woman who challenged Puritan power. The room is silent, but not peaceful. Puritan silence is never peaceful. It presses against the walls like judgment itself. You stand inside the harsh wooden world of colonial Massachusetts Bay Colony, where people fear God so intensely they begin fearing each other too. Everything here feels restrained. Dark wool clothing, cold meeting houses, faces trained never to reveal too much pleasure. Because this is a society built on control of behavior, control of belief, control of speech. And then, into that world walks Anne Hutchinson, a woman who asks questions out loud, which, in places like this, can be more dangerous than violence. At first, she does not look revolutionary. That's important. History often imagines dangerous women arriving like storms. Anne arrives as a wife, a mother, a deeply religious woman crossing the ocean with her family in search of spiritual purity. She comes to New England because she believes in the Puritan mission. That's the irony at the center of her story. Anne Hutchinson does not begin by rejecting faith. She begins by taking it too seriously. You feel it immediately in the atmosphere surrounding the colony. People here believe they are building something sacred, a city upon a hill, a society watched by God himself. And societies convinced they are chosen by God rarely tolerate disagreement calmly, especially from women, especially intelligent women. Anne notices things quickly, the endless sermons about sin, the fear woven into everyday life, the way ministers speak about grace while ruling through anxiety and shame. And somewhere inside all of it, she begins forming dangerous conclusions. That salvation comes through personal faith, not through perfect obedience to ministers, not through constant public displays of purity. Grace, directly from God. It sounds simple now, but in Puritan New England, that idea threatens the entire structure of authority. Because if ordinary people can interpret God personally, then what happens to the men controlling religious power? That question hangs invisibly over everything Anne does. At first, her meetings seem harmless, women gathering inside homes, discussing sermons, sharing spiritual reflections. But Anne is too charismatic to remain small for long. You can almost feel the energy in those candlelit rooms. People leaning closer when she speaks. Listeners carrying her ideas back through the colony like sparks hidden under coats. And soon, men begin attending too. That's when the fear truly starts. Because Anne Hutchinson is no longer simply discussing religion. She is creating influence. You see it in the nervousness spreading through Puritan leadership. Ministers whispering privately, magistrates studying reports about her gatherings, powerful men realizing a woman is shaping public thought without permission. And Anne? Anne keeps speaking anyway. That's what makes her remarkable. She understands the danger. This is not modern America with debates and television interviews. This is a colony where religious disagreement can destroy your life entirely. But Anne refuses silence almost instinctively. Not because she wants chaos, because she genuinely believes truth matters more than obedience. And perhaps that's what frightens authority most. Not rebellion for power, conviction. You feel the tension tightening around her now. Every sermon feels aimed partly at her. Every conversation carries suspicion underneath it. Because Anne Hutchinson commits the unforgivable act in rigid societies, she makes people think for themselves. And once people begin questioning authority, authority rarely responds gently. Soon, the whispers become accusations. Dangerous woman, heretic, disruptor. A woman leading men astray simply by speaking with too much confidence. And beneath all the religious language, you can feel the deeper fear hiding there. A woman refusing submission publicly. In Puritan New England, that feels almost apocalyptic. So the colony prepares to make an example of her. And Anne? Pregnant, surrounded, still speaking calmly. Because some women walk into history carrying swords. Anne Hutchinson walks into it carrying ideas. And ideas, especially forbidden ones, often survive longer than empires do. Right as the Puritan leadership decides this woman can no longer be tolerated, Because next, Anne Hutchinson stands trial against an entire colony determined to silence her.
The trial feels less like justice and more like a warning. You can feel it the moment Anne Hutchinson enters the room. Rows of powerful men waiting, already convinced she is guilty. Not of violence, not of theft. Something far more threatening to Puritan authority. Thinking independently in public. The courtroom inside the Massachusetts Bay Colony feels heavy with controlled anger. Dark wood walls, cold air, faces trained into righteous severity. Because the leaders of the colony believe they are protecting society itself, and that belief makes them dangerous. You see it in John Winthrop especially. Calm, intelligent, completely convinced Anne Hutchinson threatens the spiritual order of New England. That's what makes the trial so fascinating centuries later. Neither side believes they are evil. Both believe they are defending truth. And history becomes terrifying when absolute certainty collides with absolute certainty. The accusations begin carefully at first, that Anne has criticized ministers, that she holds unauthorized meetings, that she encourages spiritual pride and disorder. But beneath every charge, you can hear the real accusation hiding underneath. A woman has gained influence we cannot control. Anne answers calmly. That's the part that unsettles them most. She does not appear hysterical, does not collapse emotionally, does not beg forgiveness quickly enough to make everyone comfortable. Instead, she debates them publicly. You can almost feel the room tightening every time she speaks confidently, because Anne knows scripture, knows theology, knows how to defend herself intellectually. And for a moment, it almost looks like she might survive this. That's the dangerous thing about intelligence. When it appears in the wrong person at the wrong time, power becomes desperate to contain it. You see it in the growing frustration among the magistrates, because Anne refuses to stay inside the role they prepared for her. She keeps answering like an equal, and Puritan society is not built to tolerate female equality comfortably, especially not spiritual equality. The trial stretches on, hours turning heavy, questions becoming sharper, the room slowly transforming from legal proceeding into spiritual combat. Then Anne makes the mistake that seals everything, or perhaps the decision. Because history depends on which version of her you believe. Near the end of the trial, Anne claims direct revelation from God, not metaphorically, personally. You can almost hear the emotional shift inside the room instantly, fear, real fear, because now Anne Hutchinson is no longer merely criticizing ministers, she is claiming spiritual authority outside the control of the colony itself. And in Puritan New England, that feels catastrophic. You see it in Winthrop's reaction, the certainty hardening completely, because societies built on strict order cannot survive people claiming private revelation easily. If one woman can speak directly to God, what stops others from rejecting authority entirely? So the verdict becomes inevitable, heretic, dangerous, unfit for the colony. And then comes the punishment that echoes through history, banishment. Anne Hutchinson is expelled from the very religious society she crossed an ocean to help build. That's the tragedy buried underneath everything. She believed in the Puritan mission once, perhaps more sincerely than many of the men judging her. But rigid systems often destroy their most passionate believers first. You feel the emotional weight of exile now, a pregnant woman leaving the colony with her family while snow and suspicion close behind her. No dramatic armies, no execution platform, just removal. The colony pushing her outward like a body rejecting something it no longer knows how to contain. And yet, even after the trial, Anne refuses to disappear quietly. That's what makes her story linger, because banishment does not erase ideas. If anything, it spreads them. People continue debating her long after she leaves. Some secretly admire her courage. Others view her as proof of what happens when women gain too much influence. And somewhere beneath all the theology, you can still feel the deeper cultural panic underneath it all. A woman speaking publicly, a woman shaping thought, a woman refusing submission even while surrounded by powerful men demanding it. That tension feels strangely modern, which is why Anne Hutchinson never fully stays buried in history, because every generation rediscovers women like her eventually. Women punished not simply for being wrong, but for refusing silence. And the haunting part? Her story does not end peacefully. After leaving Massachusetts, Anne eventually settles farther south near territory claimed by the Dutch, and their violence finds her anyway, an attack, chaos, death at the edge of the colonies, and almost immediately her enemies interpret it as divine punishment. That's how deeply she frightened them. Even her death becomes propaganda. But history has a strange habit of resurrecting the people authority most wanted erased. And Anne Hutchinson survives now not as a warning, but as a question. What happens to societies that fear independent thought so much? They punish women simply for speaking too clearly. So we leave her here, not crowned, not victorious, but dangerous in a quieter way than queens or warriors, because Anne Hutchinson challenged an empire built not from armies, but from certainty itself. If this story stayed with you, if you felt the tension between faith, freedom, and power, don't stop here. There are more women like her, women history called dangerous simply because they spoke with authority in rooms built to silence them. Subscribe and come back for the next chapter. Next time. We step into a woman whose beauty made kings kneel, and whose ambition made empires tremble. Stay dangerous, stay loud, and never let them hold the pen